Mark.
Here.
Cindy.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Nancy.
Yes.
Kurt.
Here.
John.
Good John or the other John? Here.
John Hamlin. And John Hope.
Excused. So now it's time for our voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And now we need to have an approval of minutes, and the minutes for the December 13th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Are you guys with us?
I approve that we move the. I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from December 2013. Any changes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, those are approved. Now we're looking for approval of today's meeting or amendments to the meeting. Entertain a motion for approval of today's meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to accept today's meeting agenda. Is there any amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor of today's agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, today's meeting agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is public hearings and bid awards. There are 3 public hearings today, and the first public hearing is on Ordinance 2013-23, providing for Chapter 3.52, establishing a public borough library and retaining a 7-member library board, elected library board. Anybody in the audience want to talk to this in the public hearing? Okay, seeing no interest in that public hearing, we'll move on to the next public hearing, and that's Ordinance 2013-24, adjusting the fiscal year 2014 budget to provide for acceptance of a $16,940 library grant and to appropriate $36,500 for a replacement electrical department vehicle. Any discussion on those? Okay, seeing none from the public, we'll move on to the public hearing for Ordinance 2013-25. And that's providing for chapters 11.04 through 11.20 of Title 11, the Borough Traffic Code. Any interest in talking to that on the public hearing? Okay, seeing no interest from the public, the public hearings on those 3 items are closed. Is there any visitors' views today related to the agenda? Okay, could you please come to the microphone, state your name, and talk about your subject, on the subject you're interested in.
My name is Harry Anderson. I represent the city of Kupanoff, and the main reason I'm here is for the talk about the mail-in voting.
Oh, okay.
You want me to go right with it?
Yep.
Okay. I'm a transplant from the state of Washington, and in Washington they have mail-in voting, and it has corrupted, in my opinion, more than anything else. They had count the votes 3 times for governor down there, and the first 2 times a Republican won, the 3rd time the Democrat won. Part of their problems were they would end up not mailing the votes out in time for the GIs to vote. And then they said, okay, they were going to change all that. When it comes down to a lie face-to-face is hard to do. A liar can lie a little easier on the telephone, and on paper it's darned easy. And when they talk about trying to help us out for the convenience, we all have to come into town somewhere along the line. We all have to pick up our mail at the post office. Now what they're going to be doing is addressing a ballot to a post office box, not a person. And when it comes to a witness, anybody can be your witness on that thing, theoretically. I mean, I'm not saying they're corrupt, but it sure seemed a little funny on a lot of that stuff. Now, originally when I started voting, I was 21 when I registered to vote, and we used to have a booth. You walked into it, and you pulled a great big lever, and it closed the curtains behind you. And inside there was little tiny levers. You flipped the lever to vote for whoever you wanted. Nobody could tell who you were voting for or anything else or how you were voting. When you pull the lever back, it calculated your vote in there. Then they went to a punch card, and they put little tiny holes in there. And then, of course, people were punching the wrong holes or something, whatever. Then they turn around, and now it's with little ovals. You fill in the oval. Well, as you're filling in the oval, down there in the state of Washington, again, they have taken and what they call enhanced the ballots. Your intent was to vote for this. Well, the thing was, you didn't vote for either person or for or against the article you were looking at. But they would enhance it because they thought you were going to vote for it. That's what they call enhancing the ballot. Again, to me, it's crooked. It is crooked. And when you have to come in here and show proof of ID, who you are, it's face-to-face again, and the honesty holds pretty truth on that. When you talk about getting more people to vote, I'm sure they do. Now, when you voted on the borough here, well, you had, what, about 1,100 people voted? How many registered voters are there in here? More than 1,100. Yeah, I'm sure, unless that school is bigger than I thought it was. Because there's about, 20 or 2,800 or something like that in the city was, and about 300 on the outside, whatever. But not all necessarily were voters, but again, too, it doesn't bring that much out to add to the voting. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Anderson? Well, thanks for your input. We're on the issue of whether to have a mail-in ballot for future elections or not.
Thank you.
Gary. I'm sure we are going to have more discussion. We're still gathering ideas by email and letter and in person from people to try to make the right decision on that. Any other visitors' views related to today's agenda? Okay, seeing none. That brings us to item 7, visitors' views unrelated to today's agenda. No. Board, commission, and committee reports. There's none listed on the agenda. On the consent agenda today, there's one item, and it's for approval of Keto's Cave renewal applications for alcohol, beverage dispensary, and packaged liquor store licenses. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the item on the consent agenda.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Lagodakis to approve Keto's Cave's renewal for applications for alcohol, beverage dispensary, and packaged liquor store licenses. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
And John.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 6-0 unanimously. Okay, next item is a report of other officers and Borough Recycling Program. We have details and public information from Carl Hagerman, Public Works Director.
Mr. Mayor and Assembly, Carl Hagerman, Public Works Director, and I have a brief report today on the recycling program. I'm sure, as everybody knows, we're moving fast towards a commingled curbside recycling program. Things are going well. We're getting information out to the public, and we're still targeting to start that service on the first week of February, which is less than a month away. So I wanted to point out that the materials that are in your packet are also on the website, which includes, it's basically a program announcement. There's some basics on how to sign up and what the program's all about. There's an easy recycling guide, which I brought some extra copies today over on the table for anybody that hasn't seen that yet or wants to pick up one to share with constituents. And also there's a list of frequently asked questions that have come in to the department as we're getting ready to roll out the system. And on that subject, I wanted to just touch on a couple things, clarifications. All the documents are kind of fluid right now. As more information comes in and the program is solidified, we'll adjust those documents on the website, particularly the frequently asked questions. I wanted to offer a couple clarifications there, because there have been some questions that have come in since we posted this. And the first one is on the question of where do I get more bags? And initially we had set this up so that people would come to Public Works after the initial rollout. And the initial rollout, bags will be distributed to people that have signed up for the service. But after that initial rollout, as you deplete your supply of bags, you come into Public Works to get those. I think we're going to add the finance department as another source for those bags for people that come in and pay their bill on a monthly basis, or in town. It's a more convenient spot for people to come in and grab bags. And it's important for people to realize that it's not going to be 1 or 2 bags at a time. We're going to hand out multiple bags so that people have a supply of bags, so it'll take them hopefully many months down the road, and they won't have to worry about visiting a Borough facility to get a fresh supply of bags. Also, another clarification revolves around how to track this, because we set this up to as an incentivized voluntary program. We have a lower rate if you recycle. In order to track that, we had set it up so that people would have to put out recycling every week, so that we knew they were actually recycling. Well, there's some people that have come forward and said, you know, my volumes are very small. I don't put out my garbage every week. Even though I pay for that service, I don't put out garbage every week. So there will be probably a clarification going on to this, that as long as whenever you do set your garbage out, you also set out recyclables, then there won't be any problem with that in getting the incentive rate, the lowest rate possible on your garbage system. Also, on the bags, we're starting with fairly large bags to begin with. I think there's a lot more in people's garbage cans that can be recycled than they realize, so we wanted to cover that. But again, the low volume people are coming forward and saying, you know, we might not need that big of a bag, and so we're going to order some smaller ones, and it'll help because it'll save money for the program, and it'll serve the need for the people that have the lower volumes of recyclables. So anyway, just a few clarifications, and I just wanted to say that we're heading there in a hurry, and ask if there was any questions.
Any questions of Carl? You know, I have, Kurt, go ahead.
I was just going to ask him about if you don't set out the can every week, and so you don't set out your recyclables every week, are they going to then be charged a higher rate, or are they going to just be whenever they set their can out with the recyclables?
The intent would be that they won't be charged additional. That is, if they set out their garbage, when they have garbage, they also need to set out the recyclables, and that way we'll be able to track to make sure that they are recycling at the same time.
Okay.
Nancy, you have a question?
I have a question. I see in here that if the bag gets ripped and the the recycle gets spread around, we can get a garbage can and put it out there. My biggest concern is that my commingled garbage, which is going to include some cardboard and office paper, gets wet. Is it okay to get a can with a lid and put it in just to keep it dry, or would you rather not deal with extra cans?
The can thing is an option for people if they have animals in the neighborhood that are going to cause a problem. I've been doing a trial of my own. I've got a bag of commingled recycle that's been in my truck, the back of my truck, open to the world for about a month and a half now. And there have been a couple peck holes in it, but they haven't bothered it. It hasn't been on the ground for dogs to sniff at. But I think birds are the bigger problem as far as animals
And
getting
it's
at
dry.
things.
It's staying dry.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that the need for people to buy a garbage can to contain the bags is not going to be warranted, but it is an option. It will add some time to the collection route and some complication, but if there is a problem, people need to know that they can take steps to mitigate that.
Any other questions of Carl? I've got a question, Carl. It's about the bags, when you run low, you need to go either to the, you say you added a location to the borough office here, and then Public Works. When you did the pilot program, didn't they, if I'm not mistaken, they just put more bags, like in the handle of your garbage can? Is that a possibility for
It
people,
is
a way to put out an indication that you're running low on bags so you can get more? Some people might not have easy access to either the borough office or the Public Works. Just,
Right.
this is my own, I guess, a thought, concern, that it could be a problem.
It is a possibility. It seemed to work fairly well for the trial. The thing that I'm worried about right now is that with a lot more customers to deal with, that our contractor's going to have enough time in the day to collect all that. And every little bit of time that they have to do a little bit more when they pick up that recycling might make it harder for them to collect everything on a daily basis. Not only because we'll have the curbside program, but they're going to continue to pick up the office paper and cardboard from commercial businesses and the post office too. So there are some things that go into, I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible for that collection contractor to pick that stuff up. If it turns out that we've got plenty of time that in the day for them to collect all of the curbside materials and the other materials that they have to collect, and there's still spare time, then perhaps bag distribution by that staff wouldn't be a problem.
I would just like to see it as convenient for the ratepayers too, you know.
Sure.
So,
And just one
Cindy?
more question. And just to clarify, this is within Service Area 1, or everybody who's on the road system can be a part of this?
Everybody that's on the road system can be a part
Okay.
of this, yes. Everybody in Service Area 1 must have garbage service. Everybody outside, they can elect to have garbage service
Okay.
on the road system. Same is true of the recycle program.
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Carl. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the mayor's report. I'll add a few items to what's on the printed agenda here, but the first one is the vacancy on the hospital board. The borough is seeking letters of interest to fill a vacancy on the hospital board. The person appointed to the vacancy would serve until October 2014, when the election is done. Letters of interest may be submitted to Borough Clerk Kathy O'Rear, or the hospital board Tom Abbott, or myself, the mayor. The Alaska Municipal League Winter Legislative Conference. The conference will be held at the Baranoff Hotel in Juneau from February 17th through the 20th. Sounds like they're running short on rooms at the Baranoff Hotel. Steve and I plan on attending. During the time up there, we will get together with our lobbyist, Ray Matuszewski, and lobby some of the legislators with our capital projects list and other needs of the borough. Is there anybody else that's interested in attending, or will it just be Steve and I?
I'll be up in that area. If I'm available, I'll attend.
Okay,
I'm,
we haven't set a firm schedule with Ray yet as to the dates we're going to meet with legislators, and we're working on that. Monday of that week is a holiday, and so actually we did one other time we went and lobbied the legislators before this conference even started, and that worked well, as long as they're in town. So we'll let everybody know what the schedule is, and we'll call me. I'll have my cell phone if you get into town. Then there's a work session reminder. The Assembly and the Hospital Board will conduct a joint work session on Thursday, January 9th at 3 p.m. in these chambers. Topics to be discussed will be code provisions for the hospital board, board investment and purchasing policies, and financial status, and the public is welcome to attend. That's this Thursday. Holiday reminder, most borough offices will be closed Monday, January 20th, 2014, in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Because of the holiday, the next assembly meeting will be Tuesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. Another thing to add, well, I guess in February, on the 17th, that's President's Day, so the meeting would be the next day, the 18th, but the manager and I will be gone for the Winter Legislative Conference. So if everybody else, there'll still be a quorum. Kurt might be gone.
I'm in Costa Rica.
How can you be there? So if we don't, so that leaves, that's 3 of us gone, that leaves 4, but we can't ask Mr. Hoag if he'll be here, so we're gonna have to make some kind of arrangements for the second meeting. And will you be back on the 24th of February?
No,
Cindy?
not until March.
Long gone. We'll have to work on it. Nancy, will you and John be here?
As far as no, I'm not going anywhere.
I'll be
Okay.
here also.
So Kathy, what do we need to do? Just talk to the other assembly members and see when we could get a quorum and just
So right
advertise
now,
it.
Cindy's gone.
Cindy's gone, I'll be gone, Kurt will be gone.
It's 3 of you.
That leaves 4, but we don't know, we'd have to ask Mr. Hoag if he'll be here. And then the 4 that were here could appoint who's going to run, chair the meeting.
Let's check with John then, unless you want to reschedule.
Maybe we should communicate with John and see, and we can
I'll check with him first.
let everybody know. That should work. Okay, and I like to use these hard paper calendars because I'm not computer savvy enough to keep anything in the computer. Is anybody else, if anybody else on the assembly would like one, the clerk will provide them for you. Anybody want a paper calendar? Just let Kathy know. I guess I'm the only one that's dyslexic, or whatever you would call that problem. Another thing on the mayor's report today that we didn't add on the agenda was the final judgment for the redistricting. We had a letter here from our attorney, Tom Klinkner. The court issued the attached final judgment and order regarding briefing on cost of attorney fees issues. While the borough did not challenge the redistricting board's revised districting plan for Southeast, the board only issued that plan after the borough successfully challenged the board's original plan. Thus, the borough may be considered a prevailing party in this case for purposes of an award of cost and attorney fees. The deadline for moving the court to determine that the borough is a prevailing party is January 22nd, 2014. The attorney asked that we let him know by day after tomorrow. And I think it's important that we ask for the fees, or some of them back. It was $67,000. So that was the attorney's fees for that. So we probably need a motion to do that, Kathy?
Yeah, maybe good.
I'd enter.
Mr. Mayor, I so move that we request the remittance of the $67,000 attorney fees.
Is there a second?
I'll be happy to second that.
Been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Lagodakis to have our attorney ask the court for return of our attorney fees for this case. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, I think that is all for the mayor's report, so I will turn it over to Steve. It's time for the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Glow and the engineer are working on the final paperwork for the drive-down facility bid. Tamco is planning the pre-construction meeting soon. Is it the 21st now? Yeah, I thought I had changed. So they'll be here and we'll start the process of ironing out some of the details and schedules. Getting ready to advertise for the crane dock widening project shortly, and then we'll hope we get good bids on that as well. Rasmussen Bridge materials have started to be delivered. Planks from the mill have been staged at the long-term parking area at the crane dock parking, and the mill continues to cut the required planks and is also working with third-party suppliers on the treated planks and pile delivery. Parks and Rec will begin advertising for their Losing Big Petersburg. It's an annual fitness competition. The advertising started today, I believe. Completion will begin the first week of February. Also just finished the maintenance on the Aquatic Center. Fresh paint, some rust cleanup, tile work, and lighting repairs throughout the facility. And Dave Nauman, we're bringing him back a little bit early. Our maintenance guy for the Parks and Rec will start back on January 20th to get working on the shelter roof for Sandy Beach so we can have it ready for spring and summer. We did get a cost estimate from Carl on the demolition for the Wrangell Avenue structure. We're kind of waiting for the word from the attorney. Mr. Treem has filed an appeal to the process. We were waiting for him. He did not file a stay to stop us from the demolition. However, he spoke to Jim Brennan and explained that he would be doing that today. So at this point, we're on hold waiting for that to occur, and then if it does occur, waiting for that appeal to get in front of the Superior Court judge. Mr. Treem has stated to our attorney that he will challenge I believe the case was assigned to Judge Carey, and Mr. Treem does not want him to be the judge, so he's planning on challenging that as well. So we're not exactly sure how that will go. ADEC and the governor have funded a grant to pay for about 70% of the cost of the Pump Station 1 Force Main project. We're recommending that the work be split into two separate projects to take advantage of DOT's work on South Nordic while retaining our design engineer, which is Dal HKM, to work on the pump station piece of it. Basically, it's a new force main and gravity sewer improvements to be installed within the state right-of-way, getting some of them off the beach, and upgrading pump stations 1 and 2, and getting rid of that force main that's out in the tidal zone. So we're hoping that goes to bid this spring. Recycling program you heard about. Continue to put stuff out about that. We're doing that purposely. We want to make sure everybody gets the information as well as has a chance to ask, and we can improve it as we hear questions from folks. Carl's working on an RFP for the recycling collection service. PIA has been doing that for us, and they'll continue to do that under the old contract until we get the RFP process done. We give people a chance to bid on that. We hope PIA will continue to bid on it, but we don't know if anybody else might be interested as well. And Sergeant Kerr, our new sergeant in the PD, he's headed to the State Recertification Academy in Sitka, January 11th through the 24th. And Officer Alice Williams will be attending the Force Science certification in mid-January after receiving a scholarship for that, thanks to John Hogue and his partner. Chief Swihart met with the new advocate, Annette Wooten from WAVE. They've exchanged contact information and ways they can work together on various issues. And the chief will be out of town for some previous trials he was involved in for Matt Sue on the 21st of January and Fairbanks on the 28th. And we're going to be trying something in the police department. The officers met and voted to, we're going to go to a 10-hour day work schedule in the PD for the officers. Gives us some better coverage, gives them a little bit of a benefit of a shorter work week, and gives Kelly some flexibility, if we have to bring somebody in an emergency. So looking forward to see how that works. We continue to have multiple issues related to behavioral health issues. We had 3 charged with criminal offenses, 2 transported to receive further treatment, and 1 evaluated and treated locally. Again, Kelly continues to work with Petersburg Mental Health and the hospital on trying to keep that impact on the community as low as it can be. And I'm sure as you've all noticed, with the rain and very mild temperatures, Crystal Lake is full. I don't know if we're spilling yet, but we were very, very close to that last week. So, and that's it, unless there's questions for me.
Any questions of the manager today? Okay, thanks, Steve.
Welcome.
Moves us to unfinished business, and ordinances for third and final reading today is ordinance 2013-22, an ordinance providing for a fine schedule for the municipal code and including a section addressing injunctive and civil relief. Entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Haverlick to adopt ordinance 2013-22 in its third and final reading. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will have the clerk call the roll.
Cindy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes.
Okay, now we have a few ordinances for second reading today, and ordinance 2013-23 is the first one. An ordinance providing for Chapter 3.52, Public Library. It's 3.52 of the Municipal Code, updating current language to reflect borough incorporation and providing for the retention of an elected library board for the borough. Entertain a motion to pass this or adopt this in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Member Havlicek, seconded by Member Walhooter to adopt ordinance 2013-23 in its second reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next ordinance for second reading is ordinance 2013-24. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2014 budget for known changes. Entertain a motion to adopt 2013-24 in its second reading.
I so move.
Second.
Been moved by Member Lagadakis, seconded by Member Haverlick to adopt 2013-24 in a second reading. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
John,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and Cindy.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2013-24 passes 6-0 in its second reading. Next ordinance for second reading is ordinance 2013-25, an ordinance providing for new chapters 11.04 through 1120 of Title 11, the Borough Traffic Code. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this in its second reading.
So move.
Or second?
Second.
Been moved by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Havlicek to adopt ordinance 2013-25 in its second reading. Any discussion?
I
Cindy?
I do have some comments on, I think it's 3I harbor facilities, the discussion about bicycles. And the language right now says, no person shall drive, pull, roll, push, or otherwise cause to be located upon the harbor and dock facilities of the borough, any of the following vehicles, and bicycles are included. However, we have bicycle racks at the harbor. So I think that we could cause some issues there. I don't think we want to tell people that they can't commute by bicycle.
Any
It's on
ideas
page
on that,
6.
Steve? What page is it on?
On page 6. Item I.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
this was the same exact one that kind of tripped me up too, but I thought, you know, it's in the ordinance now, and I think the Harbor Department has been doing a great job on just kind of curtailing people riding on the dock if they see them, and I think that's what it was all meant to be. I don't think it was meant to be picked apart to keep people from doing it, so that was my impression.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Or Glo, is this really meant to be specifically to the float system? Or are we talking about harbor facilities, meaning the parking lots?
I think it's probably the float system.
Right, would that, because that makes more sense. I
Right.
mean, it may just be a language change here that says, you know, it says upon the harbor and dock facilities. You know, Glo could work with Kathy on the exact language, but I think the concept was we don't want people riding bicycles on the floats.
And that change would address my concerns.
Looks like you could just remove the word "and." Harbor dock facilities. Anyway, so
We can,
I can see your,
that makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of tripped me up too. when I read that.
so Kathy, can we change that for the third reading and note the change? Or
Yeah, in fact, if you want to do it now.
we can make an amendment to, change that section, that would be the proper way to do it. Would you like to make an amendment to that?
I will, I move that we amend the language to drop the word "and" between harbor and dock facilities so that it says harbor dock facilities in paragraph I on page 6 of this ordinance.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it, but what page is it on?
Page
in
6.
Page 6.
48.
Oh, 48.
48
I'm
is the
sorry.
bottom number.
Sorry.
Sorry, that's okay.
Paper copies. So we'll give Nancy a time to find it and look at it. I think that would be
Well,
appropriate.
you know, the
Number
history
I.
of this is from the Hanson kid who rode his bike down, hit the bull rail, went over into the water, got stuck in a crab pot and drowned. And that's when they had the ordinance to not allow bicycles on the float or the dock. And that's what it should be. A continuation of that. So,
Yeah.
Well, do
Anything
you have a
that you
comment, Will?
could write that would be supportive of that, we would appreciate, because we are pretty strict about that down in the harbor of people on vehicle, or I mean, on, well, also all-terrain vehicles, but majority of the problem we have are bicyclers. And, yeah, we're scared to death of people falling overboard, so.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend section I on page 6 to remove the letter "and." So it'd be upon the harbor dock facilities, so it would still keep people from riding on the docks, and that's our concern, I believe. Is there any more discussion on that? Striking that word?
I don't see where removing the "and" makes any difference.
Cindy?
Currently, it says harbor and dock facilities. So, in essence, you couldn't have a bicycle in the parking lot.
Well,
But we
the-
have bike racks in the parking lot.
Well, why don't we remove the word facilities then and
If we
just
remove
have
the
the
word
harbor and
"and,"
dock?
it's just harbor dock facility, and it addresses the dock.
And if we remove the word facilities, it does the same thing.
Yeah, well,
Kathy, do you have a recommendation on the wording?
How about removing the word harbor and,
And that would,
how about just
We
putting
just
it
say
upon the
harbor
dock
floating
facilities?
facilities, because that's what you're concerned about, isn't it?
Well, the bicycle hit, this was
Ramps are floating.
over
Actually, I think
70
what you've
years
done
ago
just
this
by
happened.
removing the "and" works. Harbor dock facilities, that's any of the docks, anything connected with the docks.
so I guess,
Do that, why don't you let Glo and I work on if it's
and bring it back,
causing
yeah.
problems, yeah.
Okay.
And I can work on it for third reading.
If I may, I think the intent is clear. We don't want people riding bicycles
In the
on,
harbor.
well, in the parking lot is fine, not on the ramp
Right.
and on the floats. I mean, and when we have a drive-down facility, not out on the drive-down facility. I think, I mean, is that what I'm hearing is the intent?
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. We could just,
can I table the motion until the next
Right.
meeting?
Is
That'd
there-
be
who's, okay. We will discuss this at our next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, one more quick
Yes.
observation here. Wagons ought to be kind of defined too, because we have carts, you know, and
Right.
stuff, so I mean, but like I say, when I read this, I was kind of confused a little bit, then I thought, you know, this has already been an ordinance, now we're just changing it into a borough ordinance. And they manage it pretty well, so I was just gonna let it ride, but I agree. A couple of word changes, if it makes it more clear for everybody, I'm in favor.
And it sounds like they're going to look at, breaking out whether it's a parking lot or a floating facility or ramp, so maybe it'll be more descriptive and it'll be actually better. Because I do see people riding bicycles down the harbor, not very frequently, but once in a while. Okay, so now we need to vote to pass it as it is in its second reading. And that's ordinance 2013-25, an ordinance providing for new chapters of the Borough Traffic Code. Any more discussion on that? The main motion. Clerk, call the roll.
John,
Yes.
Kurt,
I want to vote no because we're going to change the wording, right? Is that how it would be?
Well, we
We're gonna
change
vote on-
it.
we're gonna-
That's
If you vote yes, it'll pass like it is, and then we can modify it in the
Okay,
third
Third
yes,
reading.
reading.
then, Yes. Sorry.
Bob,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes. Yeah, that was confusing. Okay, next item under new business is the Juneau appeal of Petersburg Borough boundaries, and still, at this point, there's no decision yet from the Superior Court, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. I'd like to make a note that Representative Christ Tompkins is in the room. Welcome. Okay, new business, Resolution 2014-1, a resolution authorizing quitclaim deeds to be issued to the successful bidders at the public auction from the last meeting. Entertain a motion to adopt 2014-1.
So move.
There a second? It's been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to adopt Resolution 2014-1. Is there any discussion on this? Will Clerk call the roll?
Bob,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes. Okay, that resolution 2014-1 passes 6-0. And next item on the agenda is resolution 2014-2, I should say, a resolution authorizing loan applications to the Alaska Clean Water Fund to assist in funding improvements to the wastewater collection system. And the manager talked about this earlier, but the borough is seeking $2,493,315 in loan funds to assist with funding the pump station #1 Force Main and Scow Bay #1 pump station upgrade projects. I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2014-2.
So, second.
Been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to adopt Resolution 2014-2. Is there any discussion? I've got one question. It's probably here. If I read it a couple times, I'll probably catch it. But so this is just applying for loan funds in case we don't get what's on the governor's budget for this year, Carl? Chris?
Well, the grant funding that's in the governor's budget is a matching grant. So even if we get that grant, we'll still need
30%.
funds to, 30%, right.
But if that comes through, then we won't even need to apply for the loans. We're just doing it in case it doesn't come through.
We will need the loan because we'll need the funding to match the grant. We don't have anything in our budget right now, on the borough side.
Okay.
So we do need some amount of loan funding. We just don't know how much yet.
Right.
So we want to apply for the full amount that's available in case the grant, for some reason, doesn't make it through the budget process.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the
Yeah.
clarification. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Cindy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and Bob.
Yes. Okay, resolution 2014-2 passes 6-0. Next item is fiscal year 2015 budget assumptions. And the staff is beginning budget preparation for the upcoming fiscal year. Prior to committing considerable time toward the task, the direction from the assembly is requested. Proposed assumptions have been submitted for consideration. So, is there any discussion on this? I don't know if this is a, do we need to take action on this or not? It's just kind of to give the staff direction.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes, you can. Would
Thank
you like us to make a motion so you get?
Well, eventually, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, what this is about is without, this is what we're doing. Without any additional direction from the Assembly, this is our approach to the budget. So, therefore, the department heads are going to build their budgets based around these assumptions. If you want to do something differently, now is a really good time to say that so that they don't waste a lot of their time. Now, I get it that without a budget in front of you, it's hard for you to know where you want to head with it. But With the same thing being said, it's really difficult for the department heads to build a budget and then halfway through the budget process in work sessions, go back and, cut 50% or do dramatic changes. It makes it really hard to do. So we can do any number of these things. I mean, this is the assumptions going in that we're asking the department heads to do. And I can read through them really quick if you want. If the body wants to do something totally different or add assumptions or change assumptions, this is a really good time to do that. It makes our job a lot easier. Although we understand that's why we're going to have work sessions and other things, is to iron out some of that. Makes somewhat sense?
It does. It gives you a starting point without hopefully changing direction too
And
drastically.
there's 7 of you, and you all have different ideas on different things, and we just need to know as a group what is it that everybody wants to do. At this time, this is what we're planning on doing, which what I would call is pretty much a status quo budget, meaning we're not changing services. We're not going to offer a bunch more services. We're not going to offer less services. And without major change, we don't expect to have to make any major changes to mill rates or sales tax rates or anything like that, other than just watching our pennies. And we don't expect to fund any major big projects other than what's already on the table. So that's kind of where we're headed. So you want me to read through the assumptions or not?
I don't know if people listening in the audience would pick up on anything, but maybe just if you touch bases on just the first part of it there.
Start off with the general fund, which is main assumption: the general fund will balance, meaning the budget won't be in the red. We're going to try to budget $200,000 of general fund revenue that we put into the property development fund. This is basically a depreciation recapture. This is to start gathering funds for if we have to fix a building like this one. We don't currently have a fund for that. We're hoping to be able to put $200,000 aside for repairs to buildings that we have. The prime issue there would be the police station project. If at some point we need to have a match or spend some of that money out of our own pocket. Plan is an additional $50,000 of the raw fish tax to the harbor. So basically, in 2014, any fish tax revenue received greater than $350,000 will go to the harbor. For next year, it would be anything over $300,000 would go to the harbor. Similar idea. Concept is give more money to the harbor, not necessarily for operations, but for them to put money aside for harbor facilities down the road. General fund will use $50,000 less in offset funds from the Secure Rural Schools revenue. That's kind of our school capital project fund. We currently use some of that to offset the maintenance costs. The idea would be to use $50,000 less of that, leaving more money in there for the school for future capital project matches that they have. We would reduce the subsidy to assisted living from $100,000 to $50,000. It's a good thing. They've been so successful. We're finding that we have to give them less money to keep them in the black. So it's a good thing. Basically, if you added all that up, we need roughly $250,000 in additional revenue or cuts to expenses to keep the general fund balanced. We expect that to be there with the increased property tax revenue. These numbers would all change if we see less tax revenue than expected, and we'd be back on the drawing board. But that's kind of the plan there. We would ask departments to itemize out all travel and training on separate forms, given the department head, and that'll be submitted with their budget. Again, that was several of the assembly members had issues with travel and training budgets, so we're going to do a little more good job itemizing that as part of the budget process. In the enterprise funds, we're trying to basically setting a budget goal of profit being equal to 10% of their current depreciation. That's an issue in the sense that our enterprise funds do not fully recapture depreciation today. good reason for not doing that is that often they get state revenue, state capital money that pays for things rather than them having to capture depreciation. If we captured 100% of depreciation, you'd see the rates in all of our enterprise funds have to go up dramatically. So what we're doing here is saying we want to see year-end profit in those funds at 10% of whatever their depreciation is. It's a way to make sure they're putting some money aside towards future capital costs. If you break that down to, kind of the calculation that Jody came up with was operating revenues plus transfers in for debt service payments minus operating expenses minus the annual debt service payments equals profit. And then we went 10% of that depreciation showing up as a profit line. So for an example, based on last year's budget, this year's budgets, the electric fund had operating revenues of roughly 5.5 million, operating expenses of 5.3, minus a couple $100,000 in debt service, has them losing roughly 90,000. 10% of depreciation would be 67,000. So they would need to find some ways to improve that number. Water fund, roughly 900,000 in operating revenue, 165,000 comes in from the economic fund for debt service payments, minus 700,000 in expenses, minus the depreciation. They gets them to about $5,000 is their number. Their 10% number is 80,600. So again, we have some work to do there. So on throughout the process. Wastewater fund is already there based on their last year's results. The sanitation department is almost there, really close. Harbor is already there, and elderly housing has a little bit of work to do. They're at a negative 25,000. 10% is about 7,000. So we need to find about 31,000 there. And then assisted living is roughly, it's about 50,000 to break even, and with the subsidy from the general fund, that puts them just about right on track. So again, it's saying our enterprise funds have to watch their pennies a little bit. Many of them have rate increases already planned, and that probably takes care of a big part of this. But it's a way to say, to recognize that we may be receiving less money from the state in the future, and making sure we're putting money aside to cover those capital costs that each of them will have. So that's kind of our assumptions at this point. Again, very status quo. I mean, I know, Mayor, one of your big issues that is important to you is, road maintenance. This budget comes with, we're basically doing the same level of road maintenance today or next year that we're doing today. That may or may not be acceptable to this group. So that's the big kind of things that you guys could weigh in and help us out here. I mean, I think, John, you've said before you'd like to see the tax rate go down a lot. Knowing that up front is really important for the group in the back of the room. Anyway.
Any questions of the manager about this? Bob?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, has there been any discussion about fixing the inequities of taxation? Like, for instance, at Frederick Point or out the road, or some of the other ones that were brought up during the borough formation?
Not at this point. I think Councilmember Koenig's, when he was on the assembly, that was one of his issues that he had talked about, was specifically about Frederick Point, doing some kind of service area issue there where their taxes could be lowered since they don't have access to the road system for a big portion of the year. We have not put those assumptions in here, although we could if that's what the assembly wanted.
Second question, where do you see the biggest changes in revenues coming in? Obviously, with the outliers, you've got a big increase, but what about on the normal budget? Do you see any big reductions coming about, or are they status, or how do you see it?
I think we'll see I expect sales tax revenue to be less next year than it is this year. Although that's guesswork to a certain extent, assuming that the fishing industry has an impact on our sales tax. This was a really big year. Next year is scheduled to be less, so we can assume maybe people will spend less money. But estimating sales tax is always a bit of a guess. We'll have the property tax revenue coming in from outside the borough. It's a revenue line. I expect the raw fish tax to be huge, so a lot more next year, although that will affect mostly the harbor, but we'll assume the general fund will be fully funded on that. So on a revenue side, don't see tremendous changes other than the property tax piece of it. The expenditure side, concerned about health benefits is probably the big one that can hurt us. We also have a union contract that we'll be negotiating here very shortly, so we do not know the impact of that at this point, and that could have a major impact on the budget.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, John?
Steve, I appreciate you and all the department heads. Really hard work on this, because I know it is difficult, from the projected income to just emergencies. And I still really adamant about trying to keep the mill rate down, because I think it does open up, having a lower mill rate attracts more business and more people moving to town to be able to get affordable housing. So I'm hoping to do that still, and I'd like to really see our reserves higher in case of emergencies. And I know one thing that, I guess I'm just a dark person, that the school funding, I guess the educational committee, and maybe Jonathan, you have some information on this, met this past week at the state level, and they're talking about giving less to the school and asking the boroughs to support it at a higher level. So that's going to be a hit that's coming soon, and just the state monies in general, nothing for, and it's usual in the governor's budget, nothing is put in for the police station or anything like that, and they're saying our overall tax dollars are way down, and I feel it's because of the oil giveaway, but either way, I don't see us getting money for the police station or the Singley Alley Bridge or a lot of the other things that are coming up, and that falling back on, we have to do something about it. Even if we go with the walking bridge for the Singley Alley, and so that wouldn't cost us much more, if anything, with what we're doing now. But at the police station, we have to do something soon. And that falling on the taxpayers, we have to have room for that. That's the other reason I like to see the mill rate down. And we know that the hospital was looking at adding to our mill rate, and whether the public wants to support that or not, but that's something they're asking for. So, these are, I guess, increasing my paranoia for, people knocking on our doors for more monies, and I still want to have this as a very reasonable place to live. So I don't want to see those increases. So I would ask the department heads to not only not look at a budget that's similar to this year, but if there are cuts that they can make, and even if it does take a decrease in some services, I think, to me, I'd feel more comfortable if we ended up with a less budget than the same.
One thing I didn't do, Major, is give Jody a chance to. Did I say everything
Would you like
correctly?
to add anything, Jody, for?
No, maybe just that the sales tax committee has been meeting, and they're going to meet twice more in February. The next meeting is going to discuss additional taxes, perhaps on tobacco and alcohol. There's a lot of communities in Alaska that actually tax alcohol and tobacco more and transfer those funds to, say, their hospitals to help support with capital projects. That's something I was going to bring up with the hospital on Thursday when we meet with them. But because, sales tax and property tax, the more sales tax we bring in, probably the less property taxes that we are going to have to bring in. So if you want to talk about that, they hope at the last meeting in February to come up with a recommendation to bring the assembly. And then if the assembly approves it, that'll go on to the voters in next fall on the ballot. So anyway, if you want to be part of that discussion, come to our meetings.
Okay. Any other questions of Jody or while she's...
Mr. Mayor, I got one crazy idea when it comes to mill rates. What about selling more city property for people to be able to build, homes on? We have some more property up there by the up by Hammer and Weecon there that I know the city owns. I know that's a desirable, area. I mean, what would it cost to open that area up to look into that? Put city assets into private hands, collect mill rates for it. But wouldn't have to raise mill rates.
Leo, Carl, I don't know the status of that development.
All the lots at Tlingit Height have been sold. The other areas, we were very fortunate that we had federal money make all the road and utility improvements to that area free in exchange for 24 lots we gave to the Tlingit Height folks. I don't see that program coming back around. It costs a tremendous amount of money to put in road, water, and sewer with 10, 12 feet of muskeg. In the past, we haven't competed against private enterprise. The city used to do that, and then we got a lot of flack over it, but it could be a policy decision if you thought that would be worthwhile.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Leo, is there other areas within the community that, where the borough owns lots? I mean, significant amount?
None that have road, water, sewer, or electricity.
Okay, so any development, we would have to include that as far as the cost goes?
Yes.
Does that kind of...
Well, it created more questions for me. I mean, what does it cost to develop, say 50 lots someplace like up by Tlingit and Haida in that area? I mean, if you do a bulk, whether anybody, can sell them or not. But.
If I remember right, I think that putting the road, water, and sewer into those two roads up by Hammer Weecon, I believe was over $3 million, but that was a federal job, federal money, so the rates were higher. And P&Z had to ask the council at that time to lower the rates because there wasn't a demand for the house. So I think if you had to pay for the road, water, and sewer, you'd be selling those lots at a loss. Seeing how we got them for free, it was nice to get some more money in the land development fund. But I think if there was a demonstrated need, private contractor could come through and ask to buy those lots. Raw land is really cheap, and they could put in the road, water, and sewer and develop it and turn a profit, hopefully.
I could see your point, Kurt, trying to get more property on the tax rolls, but whether you can develop it.
It was just a crazy thought.
Yeah. On your comment, any other questions to the manager on this issue, or Jody? You mentioned my concern about road maintenance, and the reason I bring it up is I've had a lot of people talk to me about it, and we have the equipment, we have the staff. I'd just like to, what's been conveyed to me is they'd like to see the equipment on the roads more. And if you have to, I don't know how you'd have to adjust that public works budget, but I mean, if you just have to burn more diesel to have the grader on the road 2 days a week or something like that, that's, unless you have to figure the lease of the vehicle or however you do through the motor pool, it'd be worth looking into to maybe make some people happier. So,
and I'll just defer to Carl on the staff allocation. I mean, one of the things our public works group, is also our snowplow crew and our potholing crew, and so they have kind of multiple hats. But Carl, I'll let you speak to that one.
A lot of our time is spent on our gravel roads, and it's true. A lot of people aren't very happy with our gravel roads. We aren't either. It's kind of it's a hard task to try and keep those things smooth all the time, living in a rainforest. And it's something that we try to do well, and we struggle with. Obviously, a lot of potholes around town. If we had more staff, to allocate somebody specifically just to road maintenance, filling potholes, sign straightening, that kind of thing, it would probably improve. I'm sure it would. But I guess if that's something that the assembly would like a number on, we can try and include that in the budget and see where it goes.
If it's not too difficult to come up with a number for some kind of a weekly road maintenance thing without, it'd be nice to maybe see the numbers. I would like to see them, so people think that I'm looking into it when I'm asked, at least, maybe.
Well, and Carl, for example, what's Public Works doing this week?
This week, right now in the middle of the winter when the roads are so soft, it's really hard to do anything. They're probably filling potholes, spreading gravel, but we can't really grade any roads right now because it actually makes them worse. If we touch them right now, it'd be like a bomb went off on every street that we touched. The ground underneath is still holding water, and that water is at the surface of the road, and so it's very difficult to do anything. This is the kind of weather that we were hoping to get to start on the bridge. We're not quite there with all the materials, so it's a difficult time of the year to make assignments, but they'll be probably filling a lot of potholes ineffectively because the roads are so soft.
I brought that up purposely. It's the challenge that we have, in this part of the world. Timing is everything. A lot of what we do on the roads has to do with what the weather is like and the condition of the roads, and then it limits getting the grader out. It's in a perfect world, you'd have almost like seasonal staff, and then you guess at when the weather is going to be decent, and you bring them on board just for that kind of a road project, and that may be something we have to look at. Knowing going in, you can't do much in the wintertime. A normal winter, we'd have more snow, right. More plowing, and the guys they're home by 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or whatever it is, since they come in early to do snow plowing. So, anyway, we'll work on that.
Okay, I got my 2 cents in there. Thanks for the response.
No.
So is the Assembly comfortable with letting the staff go ahead with these budget assumptions like they are? I mean, that's the whole idea of this discussion, was to kind of see if their direction was the right direction in our opinion. I'm fine with it.
And we do understand, other changes can be made. This is not a drop dead type thing. It just, makes it really difficult on them if we say, basically build a status quo budget and then turn around at the budget work session and say, well, now we need you to cut 20%. It's a lot harder to do well at that point. So
just had a thought. Maybe it'd be handy if Jody could send us all by email another schedule of the budget process.
Sure.
I don't have it in my mind right now, but it kind of lays it all out for us by date. I think that's kind of handy. Okay, so you good?
Yeah.
I guess the consensus is to let the staff move forward with these budget assumptions.
Okay.
Communications. We've got some comments back via Facebook regarding by mail-in elections. We had someone speak to it today, and we're still soliciting comments. It looks to me like out of the 25 that we received comments, 19 of them were, I prefer in-person local elections, and the other 6 were mail-in elections. So it's, at this point, it's more people in favor of still going to the polls.
Mr. Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can still vote absentee.
Correct.
So, there's your mail-in part, so if you know you're not going to be in town, or you can come in, what's that, a couple weeks, 21 days before? What's the timeline?
That's how it is right now. Yeah.
21 days before?
And vote in the office.
Okay. Yeah.
This was, in many ways, this was brought up not by us wanting to change anything. It was more along the lines of, we heard complaints during the borough process from people that it was hard for them to be in here. We mixed comments, but we actually had people asking, why can't I just mail it in? Mm-hmm. And they missed, the absentee process. So While it's hard for us to get election volunteers, the current election process is, we don't have necessarily a problem with it. It's just kind of like, okay, now's a good chance for you guys to challenge and say, what is it that you want? What does the community want? Interesting dynamics. It appears younger people prefer the mail-in, just from the standpoint of, I guess, time, that could get it. But that's not even a clear-cut distinction. So anyway.
Kathy?
I just want to make a comment. Across the state right now, there's a group of clerks that are getting together to start looking at the whole pros and cons of mail-in elections. And because the point that we're in at now, I'll be participating in that just to help gather information. But it is, right now, it's getting to be more interest throughout the state to do it. You have one borough that's doing it all the time, completely. Probably 11 or 12 of the boroughs do all their special elections by mail, but they still have their general. But just so you got an idea, it's starting to be looked at on a statewide.
basis.
But this, it's not really anywhere yet. I just wanted you to be aware of that. And then it is pretty much age based. It is the younger people that want it. In fact, they want to be able to do it on internet. And not even come in person. I mean, you're going to do it electronically, and that's it. So, just to show you where it might go one day.
So that's the only thing I have under communications. Any other assembly members have anything they want to pass along? Might take this opportunity to ask Representative Christ Tompkins if you'd like to say a few words to us as far as state business or communications. And the meeting's not lasting long enough, so I better.
I've never heard you say that before.
Well, I think Councilman Haberlich made a pretty good point. Revenues are not going in a direction that you necessarily want to see. So the next decade for the state of Alaska is probably going to be, at least what I would say, an inflection point in the future of the state. We've got growing budget deficits to the scale of $3-4 billion in the future, revenues that continue to decrease. And so at some point, some legislature in the future, I don't know if I'll be a part of it, is going to have to make decisions about taxes, about the permanent fund, and about the level of state services we can continue to afford. So this year, we still have $18 billion on savings to draw on, so we're looking at a $2 billion budget deficit, no problem. We can draw on savings, but that's not a sustainable solution. So 10 years, 15 years down the road, some very difficult decisions will have to be made. And I think what you were mentioning about setting money aside for depreciation, because the state has normally covered that shortfall, maybe not in the immediate future, but in the middle and long-term future, that may become necessary, depending on what decisions the legislature makes. So it's not necessarily a rosy picture, unfortunately. But I mean, we've got at least a little bit of a lifeline with the savings that we're sitting on right now. And I can touch on any other issues that might be of interest to the council.
Is there any questions of any assembly members of Representative Christ Tompkins? John?
Yes. Do you see the legislature appropriating any money for capital projects this year with the deficit and the governor's budget as it is?
Yes, there will be a capital budget. Just the question is how big. And in the past, gosh, as recent as 2 and 3 years ago, there was a capital budget in the scale of $2.5 billion. And the capital budget we'll probably see this year is going to be absolutely skeletal in comparison. And part of it is the political climate in the state. The state's budget has grown by, gosh, billions upon billions of dollars over the last 5 to 6 years. There's been incredible budget growth in the state because we grew the budget when we had these huge surpluses with, at least in retrospect, I wasn't part of the legislature when these decisions were made, I think little attention towards the future. And so so now there's this sort of latent desire to try to cut the budget to create an image of fiscal responsibility. And so it's almost becoming symbolically important to have as lean a budget, and especially a capital budget, as possible. And there's stories like right now in Anchorage, there's a legislative office building. You may have read about this in the news, but it's just inane. The legislature just signed a lease for the office building they use in Anchorage that's going to increase rent fivefold from $50,000 a month to $250,000 a month, and they're paying $5 million to renovate the building. They don't even get to own it. So I mean, these kinds of decisions, a lot of legislators are feeling the backlash of that there's sort of this climate of fiscal irresponsibility. And so as a result, I think there's a lot of interest in the legislature right now, or at least that's what sort of early readings are indicating, that we want to do everything we can to cut, and keep things lean, even if it means communities that have real needs suffer.
Is there any projection of what the top dollar or any dollar amount that they're looking at its capital budget? Like you said before, it's $2-3 billion, but we know it's going to be nowhere near that now.
Right. It's definitely going to be, well, no, I haven't heard any specific numbers. I suspect it will be much less than last year. But I mean, I can certainly pass on numbers as I hear them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Representative Thompson? Thanks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that I do appreciate your letters.
Oh.
I read them very well.
Good. Actually about to write one this afternoon, so.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, assembly discussion items. There's none listed. Anybody have any discussion items they want to talk about?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to bring one up. Our communications for when we're on the road, I think, need to be upgraded a little bit. So not only can we hear better, but we can also attend. I had every intentions of attending this last meeting, and I was thrown under the bus because there was lawyers that needed to be on the line, and we lost an important election as far as I was concerned on the Parks and Rec Board, and I would not like to see that happen anymore. Whatever we have to do. I mean, I was ready, willing, and able, which I'm always am, because I made that commitment to be here, and I never did get the phone call, even though I understand it was a 4-hour meeting. I'm still available, so in the future, I'd like to be included. So whatever we have to do to get better communications in here, the better.
I think that's something we've discussed in the past and that we need to work towards, and especially now since we're a borough, we've been in these discussions, we need to be able to make it so people can communicate into our meetings by phone somehow, but then they're going to have some kind of a way to call in, but allow it so there's a period of time like visitors' views, related or unrelated to the agenda, put a little section in there for call-ins, people can sign up or something, but we need to be as open as we can to public comments, I think. Any other discussion items?
I would
Cindy?
I would second that, but I also would like to see us use Skype or FaceTime to be able to see somebody, to be a part of the discussion and have them be able to see us. The technology is there. We've even got it on our iPads, so.
What button do I push?
We'll help you out.
I know it's available. Good.
I'll look into it. The library has a part of the technology grant that we received. We put in a large smart board like the schools have in the small conference room, and that may be a possibility. I mean, there's cost to that, but that may be one way to do that. The phone call thing, we honestly were trying to save money instead of doing conference bridges, which looks like we're just going to have to go that route and set up a conference bridge for each of the assembly meetings with a dial-in number and an access code. That solves that problem of the not enough phone lines. We'll budget for that going forward. The challenge there is, it's working with KFSK to make sure the sound works. In other words, we can do a conference bridge and have the speaker up here so the assembly can mostly hear, but we've got to find a way to pipe that in so it gets recorded for the people listening on the radio and gets recorded, and we don't have an answer to that quite yet. May involve getting much smarter people than me to come into town and get the equipment in place.
Kurt?
Is there other communities that are doing it this way or trying to do it this way? I mean, are we breaking new ground here, or, can we look into what other communities
Kathy?
are doing?
Well, I just know it's not going to work in a lot of your areas that you want. There's going to, Bob's for one, is not going to be able to, I don't think you can Skype out there, can you? You were saying?
Well, you cannot Skype because you don't have access, you don't have sufficient access on the internet.
Yeah, so yeah, when you guys are traveling, you're still going to run into that problem. In some of the areas you're at, you may not always be able to participate. The general form of participation is your telephone conferences. But then again, that's not going to get everybody.
Right.
Your bridges.
You still have to be able to call in.
Yeah.
But we're not giving up. I mean, feed us ideas as you come across them. You know, we're going to, like I said, I'll look into the smart board stuff. Again, I think that's more internet type stuff, but the some connection between our phone system and the speakers in this room and the KFSK feed really would be ideal. I'm just not exactly sure how to do it.
If you remember years ago, we used to be on cable TV.
Right.
And they stopped providing that service for us. That seemed to be well received in the community, but that's not done anymore for us.
Okay. Doesn't look, is there any more discussion items? Okay. Recognitions, is there any recognitions of, by staff or any of the assembly members? I can't think of any personally. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 What's your favorite